Hello and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm Blondie.
And I'm T.
How are we doing, T?
We're doing okay. Starting off 2024, a bit of all right.
A bit of that's a better than a bit of not right.
Well, it's probably a little bit of that too.
I was going to tell you, I got a massage yesterday, and I was going to ask you, since that's your profession.
Since that's my set of specific skills.
You have several specific skills. That's just one of them.
I'm doing my best Liam Neeson.
There you go. So she massaged my head, and I know that's normal, but she really got in there. Is that normal?
Like, what do you mean? Like, to where it hurt?
Like going up the center of my head and down the sides. Is that for a good 10 minutes?
Oh, did you get a deep tissue massage?
No.
Just a Swedish massage?
She's a therapist, so she hits where I need, kind of thing.
Okay. No, it's not so abnormal. You made it sound like she went in there hard for a while. Why does that sound so dirty?
She didn't go in there hard for a while. She just spent a lot of time at the top of my head.
Well, she may have felt a lot of tension there. You can just feel it. You know what I mean? You kind of follow it, and you probably just had a lot of tension there. You're hard-headed.
Well, and I was surprised that she said, you have a lot of muscles and tissues, or not muscle, but tissues and nerves and everything in there. And she goes, but your scalp moves really nice. Is that a good thing? She goes, yeah, some people's scalps, they just don't move. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I know what she's saying. Because, when you do the head massage, at least for like a regular massage, there's very specific techniques that you can use on the head. But if you're just doing a regular one, you're just pretty much putting your fingers, your palm in there to move the scalp around. That's where the tension release comes. You don't have to like dig in with your fingers or anything. But yeah, some people's scalps don't budge. And some people, it's kind of like going left to right, left to right. So you were one of those.
I have a sloshy scalp, apparently.
You're loose-brained.
Not surprised.
Right?
Okay, well, that's good to know. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Oh, you are so welcome. I don't know how smart that was, but yes, you're welcome.
Well, you sounded smart to me, which probably isn't saying much, but hey, I'll take it.
I'm smart to a dimwit. I'll take that too.
A dimwit to a dimwit. We have scored.
Hold on. I have to say I'm going to upgrade myself a little because I'm smart to a dimwit extraordinaire.
Oh, that's right. Hands and all.
Oh yeah, those spinchy hands. I don't even know where you're going with that.
It's like jazz hands. Extraordinaire.
I know, but this has nothing to do with jazz. I'm like, why are we doing jazz hands?
Because I wanna.
But see, now I know it's because you have a loose scalp. So this is all making sense to me now.
Well, at least it's just my scalp that's loose.
Okay. I'm like, don't go there.
So, what do we have going on today, story-wise?
Yeah, cut me off quick. Smart move. Today, we are going to talk about the historical RMS Queen Mary. I love this ship. It's close to home. Kind of feel like I'm a little familiar with it, but there's so much I learned about it that I didn't know. It has a really interesting history.
And it's very pretty.
It's a very pretty ship.
Inside and out.
Yeah, it's a very pretty ship. It still looks very elegant.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll cover a little of its history, and then, of course, it's got a haunted history.
Ooh. Insert ghost sounds.
We just did. So the RMS Queen Mary, who I'm going to refer to as just the Queen Mary from now on.
Well, aren't you familiar?
Right? Because, we go way back. And that's how I've always known it. Took its maiden voyage on May 27th, 1936. Think about that. This ship's been around for, and I did the math, 88 years.
And she's rocking for 88. I will say that. She looks good.
What is it? If this boat's a rockin', don't.
Do you always got to go there?
I'm sorry. I know. It's the weekend. My brain is just
We know where your brain is.
Right.
You can stop now.
And she does look good for 88, but she has had to have her grays colored, but we'll get into that later. A lot of people may not be as familiar with the Queen Mary as they are with the Titanic. So I'm going to do a little comparison of the two so you know what we're working with here. The Queen Mary is 15% longer than the Titanic at 1,017 feet, compared to 883 feet, and she's 28% wider. She has over 3 times the horsepower and was able to travel 39% faster at 32 knots or 37 miles per hour over the Titanic at 23 knots or 26 miles per hour. The Queen Mary has an additional 3 passenger decks compared to the Titanic, so it was also taller. The Titanic was completed on April 2nd, 1912. And tragically sank on April 15th, 1912, after hitting an iceberg. This poor ship only lasted for 13 days. There's that lucky number again. Good thing I'm not superstitious.
We know how superstitions go. And why do they always refer to ships as she?
Because it's got a girl name.
That's true.
The Queen Mary was a premier ocean liner and served as the new benchmark for luxury cruising. It had 2 cocktail bars, 2 swimming pools, which sounds nice, but they had a first class and a second class pool. Segregation was still alive and well back in those days. You gotta love it. There were 5 dining areas and several beautiful lounges. It also had a magnificent grand ballroom. But the first class swimming pool is what really set the Queen Mary apart from other ocean liners. The pool area was 2 decks high with balconies that wrapped all the way around it, leading to a schmancy dual staircase that descended onto the main floor. There's also a spectacular mother-of-pearl ceiling in this area. The pictures of the pool are stunning. It's a truly luxurious pool. Can you imagine seeing the pool water reflect off of that mother-of-pearl?
Oh, I bet you it was gorgeous.
People must have felt like they were in heaven's pool. That's probably why it was only for first class.
Probably.
The pool was interesting because they used filtered seawater to fill it. This came in handy because since there was no pool for the third class passengers, they were allowed to use the first class pool during the off hours. But after those vagabonds used it, all the water had to be drained, and with their seawater system, it could be drained and refilled within a 30-minute period to get it ready for first class passengers again. I guess they didn't want third-class cooties. Oh, the ignorance of the times.
I guess not. So they had a second-class pool.
Mm-hmm.
Did they also empty that one? Maybe just halfway because they were second class?
No, because it only had second-class guests in it, so they were just swimming in their own cooties. They were fine with that.
No vagabond cooties in that pool.
Vagabonds.
You know, I do have to love their optimism, building this enormous, new, bigger, faster ship that was, 10, 12 years after Titanic?
Yeah, it wasn't too far out. More than 10, 12 years. It was more like 18. Well, no, hold on. 20 years. Damn, I can't do the math. 1912 and 1936.
Well, I
24 years.
Well, I was thinking that's when it was launched, 1936. Takes a few years to build. That's where I got 10 to 12 years. Yeah.
You're right. And I'm sure they do take a long time to build. However, after World War II broke out in March of 1940, the ship was commissioned to serve and was repurposed as a transportation vessel for troops and prisoners of war. All of the luxurious articles and precious artwork were removed, and the ship was painted military gray to conceal her in the water. She became known as the Gray Ghost because of her speed being much faster than enemy U-boats. They put this ship to work, and she was estimated to have carried over 800,000 soldiers throughout the war.
Wow.
I know. Being a native Californian and growing up with this ship in our backyard, I never knew the military history. Did you?
No, not at all. And when you were describing it, I was thinking the same thing. I had no idea.
And I know I've been there a few times, and you have to stop and read all those little plaques everywhere. And of course, nobody ever does that.
I'm notorious for taking pictures of them, but I never read them. I'll read them later, and I never get to it.
I'm better about it now, realizing that I missed a lot growing up, but I'm just mad at myself for not paying more attention.
Okay, when I was talking about taking pictures, I meant last week.
Well, if you're going to take a picture, at least read it later. It's not like you don't have time.
Well,
after the war in 1947, it went back to becoming a luxury ocean liner. On October 31st, 1967, she took her final cruise and headed to her new owner, the city of Long Beach, California, where it is now permanently docked and used as a hotel, museum, and event location.
It's great for that.
It really is. And it's pretty. It's pretty where it's at.
I was just going to add a little thing that I had read somewhere. The city makes over $200 million a year through events and things that they do at the Queen Mary.
Oh, not surprised.
I mean, they've spent millions and millions refurbishing it, but they annually make over $200 million.
Wow. I need to buy a Queen Mary.
I thought that was impressive.
It is. And here's another fun fact. The Queen Mary played an important role in the theme park industry. Disney, also very close to us, assumed control of the ship in 1988 when it brought the Rather Corporation to get the Disneyland Hotel. Jack Rather was a friend of Walt Disney, and he had built and owned the hotel. But Rather's Queen Mary lease came along in the deal. Wow. So the Disneyland Resort began working on plans for a second gate at the time, a Port Disney development around the Queen Mary, including a theme park called Disney Sea, which would become the second gate to the original Disneyland.
Wow. Talk about something thrown in for the deal.
And I know you had a question about this, but a gate means like another land, just like they added California Adventure. So it would have been another theme park added type attraction.
I saw that and was wondering. Interesting.
Yeah. But when Anaheim came through with a deal that paved the way for what is now Disney's California Adventure, Disney abandoned the Queen Mary lease to a foundation. So the water idea ended up going to Tokyo Disney, and they created Tokyo Disney Sea, the second gate to Tokyo Disneyland in 2001. Tokyo even included a replica of the Queen Mary with the SS Columbia that is moored in the park's American waterfront port. Who knew? I thought that was kind of cool.
Wow. So the replica, is it actually to the size of the Queen Mary since it's in their waterfront port?
I'm not sure, but I would guess if not, it's at least close. I mean, there's like a whole gate built around it, so it's got to be big, right?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Not cheap to build.
No, not at all. And before we get to the grim, I just want to say we're pretty lucky to have this historical ship so close by. In fact, I had my senior prom in the gorgeous grand ballroom of the Queen Mary, and it was an awesome party venue. Good times. Glad I didn't know about the haunted history back then, because I may not have gone. I'd had enough haunted in my life at that point.
Another time for another story.
Another story for another time?
Thank you. Really, that just like that.
Another co-host anytime. Calling for other co-hosts.
You love me. You can't do it without me.
Okay. Now, let the grim begin. There are 55 documented deaths on the Queen Mary. Starting in 1936, Sir Edgar Britton, the very first captain of the Queen Mary, unexpectedly died of a stroke in his cabin. But on October 2nd, 1942, while still serving as a transportation vessel for the war, one of the most unfortunate events transpired for the temporarily named Grey Ghost. While being escorted from New York to Glasgow by a much smaller vessel called the HMS Curaçao, the Curaçao was zigzagging in front of the Queen Mary to confuse any potential enemies that might be trying to track them. The Queen Mary, known for her speed, caught up with the smaller vessel without anybody realizing it and ran straight into it, literally cutting it in half with its massive weight.
Ouch.
Can you imagine?
No.
The Queen Mary was about 20 times larger than the Curacao. Some members of the smaller vessel were killed instantly, but many of them were thrown into the freezing water by the impact. Some men on board were also trapped inside, unable to emerge, and went down with the ship. To make matters worse, many of those that were still alive in the ocean were sucked in underneath by the Queen Mary and chopped up by the propellers. As devastating as this was, due to war protocol, the captain of the Queen Mary, Cyril Illingworth, was not allowed to stop to rescue the surviving men in the water. I'm guessing this would have put the larger ship at risk of being tracked and more lives would have been endangered.
That makes sense. But seriously, these poor crew members, they didn't stand a chance. If it wasn't one thing, it's two others.
I know. How sad. I mean, can you imagine the guys on the Queen Mary, that survivor's guilt and having to literally just sail away from those guys?
Mm-hmm. And these are probably their actual mates. They probably knew them.
Well, yeah, this little ship was helping out the Queen Marys, so they don't get bombed.
Right.
How tragic. Nearby British destroyers came to the rescue, but couldn't get there for about 2 hours. And by that time, it was too late for many of the men who died from hypothermia. Of the 430 crew members who had been serving on the HMS Curacao, only 99 survived. It's said that you can hear the piercing screams of the Curacao men in the boiler room of the Queen Mary, because that is the area that made contact with the doomed vessel. It's also claimed to be a hotspot for ghost activity. Can you imagine? Those guys are pretty pissed, and rightfully so.
Nothing worse than a pissed off ghost. I wonder if the guys that could hear the screams, if they even realized that they hit the ship. I mean, would you say it was 4 times? If they would have even noticed that they hit the ship?
4 times what?
The Queen Mary was 4 times the size of the...
Oh, no, it was 20 times. It was 20 times the size.
Okay, well, even more. I wonder if they even realized that they had hit it.
There were some sources that said they didn't, but other sources said they did, and there was nothing they could do about it.
So awful.
Yeah. Either way, just so tragic. In 1949, Senior Second Officer William Stark was recognized for doing an excellent job. The captain, being very pleased, told his officer to, quote, "Go to my room and pour yourself a well-deserved drink, young man," end quote. But the captain failed to mention that he had used one of the gin bottles to store a cleaning chemical, and it was never relabeled. So Stark poured himself, I'm sure a very generous drink of gin, and poisoned himself to a horrific death.
That's very telling of the way the alcohol was back then. Apparently, it smelled like cleaning solution.
Right? He probably thought it was the good stuff, too. Smelling all bad like that.
Probably. And I wonder if the captain maybe did it on the down low. He didn't like the second officer.
Oh, you just went straight there. I wasn't going there at all.
It's all these podcasts we're doing.
I need to carry a bottle of gin with me at all times.
Luckily, I don't like gin.
There's also a cargo hold area in the bow of the ship that is a small, narrow tunnel-looking thing. And it has metal bars that kind of look like a jail. That's where the POWs were kept for transporting. It looks really inhumane, kind of like a sewer tunnel.
Can you still see this on the ship today? Or is this just an old picture you had seen?
I saw an old picture, but I don't know, to be honest with you. I imagine they still have to have a cargo hold area, but I don't know if it would be that one.
If they'd have all the bars still up.
Well, the bars serve a purpose, but it wasn't supposed to be for people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was supposed to be for cargo.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so just sad. In an interview, the current captain of the Queen Mary claims that at one point he was participating in a scavenger hunt on the ship with a group of young people, and he was down in the bow of the ship waiting for the group to make their way down there. While he was by himself, He was bored and decided to tap on some woodwork next to a porthole with the old dun da da dun dun. And the next thing he knows, he hears dun dun. Nobody in their right mind is going to play that game anywhere that's haunted. You're just asking for it. And I want to know, why do they have an official captain on the ship? It's pretty much just a ship's hull at this point, and definitely not going to sail the open seas ever again. Even I could be the captain of a ship that's going nowhere. Where do I sign up for that job?
I don't know. I know at one point I did see why years ago when I was reading about it, and I don't remember why you still have a captain, even though the ship's not going anywhere.
I don't even think it has any of those like mechanical parts anymore. It's just a facade, I think. Other alleged deaths include 2 women who drowned in the first-class swimming pool, but they're very different apparitions. One appears in 1930s-style clothing, while the other one appears in 1960s-style clothing. The apparition from the 1930s is one of the most famous ghost legends on board. She is a beautiful woman who is often seen wandering the hallways of the ship, all dressed in white from that era. Some believe she is the ghost of a woman who died during World War II. So I'm guessing all dressed in white makes me wonder if she was a bride, which means she would have died on her wedding day. Pretty sad.
Aww.
I know, because why else would you be dressed in white?
Was she one of the ones that was in the swimming pool? That drowned in the swimming pool?
That's what they're saying. Hold on, let me double check. Yeah, they died in the swimming pool.
Oh.
There's also 2 young boy ghosts who haunt the pool area after they drowned in it during the ship's heyday. They are seen and heard playing and be quite mischievous.
Boys haven't changed.
A ship's steward was interviewed and claims that in 1979, he saw a young lady coming up the first-class pool staircase at about 11 a.m. It was kind of early for tourists to the pool, but this woman really stood out because she was dressed in clothing that was unfashionable and obviously from the 1960s, looking straight out of Woodstock. She was young, about 22, had long blonde hair that looked like it had been ironed, as was fashionable in the 60s, and her hair went down to her waist. She was wearing very dark sunglasses, so he never saw her eyes. She also wore a burnt orange vest that came up into a turtleneck. The only way in and out of the pool area is through this particular staircase. So the 2 are coming towards each other, and the steward gets distracted for literally a second. Then he looks back to greet the lady, and she's disappeared. He explains that she could not have passed him and she could not have gone the other way because the exit was at least 50 feet away and there was no way she could have left in a literal second. He said after he thought about it, he never felt scared, but he did come to realize he had seen an apparition. The stairs that she was coming up were usually very noisy because the tiles were loose and made noise when people walked on them. It didn't occur to him until afterward that she had been completely silent coming up the stairs. Another unusual thing about her was that most people coming up the staircase are looking up at the beautiful mother-of-pearl ceiling, but this lady never once looked up. She stayed focused on the pool. The steward stayed with the Queen Mary for quite some time and eventually looked to see if anyone had died in the first-class pool, and he claims that nobody was on record dying in the pool, even though they knew differently. So it was a mystery why she would be haunting that area.
I was wondering that too, that they didn't have anybody on record.
Right. The following week, the same guy was assigned to the ship's bow for tours. In order to get to that area, you have to walk through the pool area. This was early in the morning before the tours opened, and he had walked into the pool room by himself. While he was there, he saw something that looked out of place, so he leaned about 18 inches over the water to see. While he was leaning and looking up, he said something grabbed him by the shoulder and pushed him toward the pool. He was dangling for a moment over the water when all of a sudden the same force aggressively pulled him back. For the next hour or 2, he had red marks on his shoulder. He said he didn't get scared and didn't get bad vibes, so he just went on with his day. that seems so personal. So how do you just brush that off?
I think it sounds excitingly creepy.
I completely agree, minus the excitingly part. Just creepy.
I think it sounds like, I don't know. I don't want to say fun, but I think it sounds a little fun.
Yeah. Okie dokie.
Look at me being the adventurous, creepy one right now.
Oh, it's because it's never happened to you. I've seen a ghost do something bad, and I'm going to save it for my haunted house story, but it was not fun.
Okay. I will give you that. I will give you that one.
About a week or two later, at the end of the day, this same guy was in the bow area working the tours. Now, this is a little funky, but it's part of his story, so I'm going to read it. It was summertime in California, and the staff were wearing summer uniforms, so like shorts and light shirts. Between tour groups, and while he was alone, he claims that he was transported to a different place and time. He recognized that he'd gone back to 1966 when the ship was still in New York.
Was he looking for the girl that was from 1960 that was walking by the pool?
Yeah. Isn't there a movie about someone going back in time and meeting?
There is.
Is it called Back in Time? I think it's called something as simple as that.
I thought there was a show that did that. There was also, like the preacher's wife or something like that? Wasn't that a back in time thing?
Oh, I don't remember that being a back in time thing. But there's one with Jane Seymour way, way, way back. I want to say it's called Time After Time, but that's a song. That's not what it's called.
I'm sure it has something to do with time and going back.
Anyway, back to the story.
Okay.
So he's back to 1966. The ship is still in New York. He's amongst a lot of men on the ship and not properly dressed for the chilly season. The crew is ready to cast off and head back to England, and he can feel a depression amongst them because they're going to retire the Queen Mary, and the Elizabeth had also just been retired. So there's only one ship remaining, which means 50% of the crew will be losing their jobs in a matter of months. He says after this, he was transported to the chart room, and he could look over and see someone with a pencil and a chart desperately trying to figure some stuff out. In an instant, he was also in the bakery, watching a baker pick up a tray and put it in the oven. Then he was down in the generator room on the platform, watching an engineer work. And then in a second-class cabin where the crew had come in to repair the water tap. He says all of these visions occurred nearly simultaneously, and there was no sound at all. Then right after this, he's back at work on the Queen Mary, and the last group of tourists comes through, and he finishes out his day. He claims that all these encounters are true, and prior to this, he had not had any paranormal experiences in his life and was a non-believer.
Sounds like the lucky time-traveling medium of the ship was watching a silent movie.
Right? That whole time travel thing is pretty interesting.
I wonder if he actually checked on a couple of those.
I don't know that he confirmed all of that, but I think all that's true. Just from what I've been reading about this, I think that's all true. So it sounds to me like he was saying, I got to participate in things that actually happened.
Or
it sounded like to me.
At least saw what was going on.
Right. But just for like a split second. And I don't know. I don't know about that, but it's interesting.
We'll leave it to your imaginations.
Right. One of the more famous ghosts is a little girl named Jackie who haunts the swimming pool area. That pool gets a lot of activity. She has been reportedly seen many times holding a teddy bear. So I was thinking about this. How weird is it that someone could drown not in the ocean, but in a pool on top of the ocean? You have a watery grave on top of water. Isn't that weird?
That's definitely mind-bending a little bit. And what is it about?
Is that what's wrong with me? My mind is bent.
It's time traveling. What about this pool? I mean, does it have something to do with them replacing the water? It draws people in?
I was like, I don't know where she's going with that.
Didn't they replace the water with the seawater every day?
Yeah, and they could drain it and fill it back up within 30 minutes, which I thought was like, can we even do that today? That's pretty amazing. I wasn't getting that sucking them in vibe, but maybe, you never know.
Whatever they're putting in there is basically drawing them in.
There's also reports of a little boy who fell overboard who now haunts the passageways. During World War II, check this out. During World War II, a cook was killed in a horrific fashion. Apparently, a group of Australian soldiers were picked up by the ship, and they complained about how bad the food was. So one day, they rallied and shoved the cook into an oven and just baked him to death.
Ew.
Problem solved.
Ew.
A little extreme. And that takes hangry to a new level. But the big question is, did that actually help improve the quality of the food? Hopefully that was not for nothing.
Were these guys rescued, the Australians? Do you know?
I don't know. It sounded like they were, because they picked them up like along the way. So it sounded like it might have been a rescue.
Well, to me, that's a little ungrateful. You're being rescued and you're complaining about the food. Now who's going to cook the food?
In 1966, during a drill, an 18-year-old new crew member named John Petter was crushed by door number 13, an automatically closing watertight door.
Of course he was.
Yeesh, so much compassion. Of course he was.
I was thinking, no, my of course he was meaning 13. Door
Right.
13, yeah.
These doors have a bell that rings before they shut as a warning for 30 seconds up to 1 minute on some of them. The story goes that even with the warning bell, the young man decided to play chicken and jump through the door at the last second. Well, the door won and shut on him while he was facing the door's edge, which ended up severing him in half from his collarbone to his stomach. This happened while the ship was heading out to sea, so they had to store the body for quite some time and ended up clearing out a fruit locker in the freezer for the body until they arrived to their destination. A ghost resembling a young man is seen wearing coveralls and roaming near door 13. Geez, even back then, teenagers thought they were totally invincible. When will they learn?
I don't think they ever will. And that does remind me of the videos you see today that you can watch on your phone. Men doing stupid tricks.
Stupid tricks where they're not successful and get chopped in half.
Not necessarily get chopped in half, but, land on their head. And
So I have to say that last time I stayed overnight at the Queen Mary, in the middle of the night, I'd guess about 3, maybe 4 a.m., an alarm went off with all the bells and whistles. It was really loud. And it wasn't one of those alarms where a person comes on and directs you. It was just noise, and it just kept going. So, nosy me finally got out of bed, and our room was in a short hallway right off of like the long main corridor.
mm-hmm.
So when I opened the door, I had to walk down our hallway a little bit to get back to the main corridor. But when I got there, it had disappeared. What I can only assume were the watertight doors had closed in our area, and you could no longer see that long main corridor. It was now a much shorter space, blocked off by 2 huge metal doors. It was pretty weird and confusing at the time. I didn't realize the ship could even do that.
Okay, that's just strange.
I know. Since there was literally nothing to see, I went back to my room, and shortly after the alarm stopped, out of curiosity, I went right back into the hallway, and everything was back to normal. The metal doors were gone, and those metal doors were very intimidating looking. So if this is the type of door that killed this 18-year-old guy, I definitely can understand the damage and ability to cut a body in half. Pretty gruesome. And this was quite a few years ago, but I should have looked into it, whether those doors actually still work. Because why would they? I wonder if I had my own experience and don't even know it.
Could very well have.
I know. I should. I don't know. I'll have to do that and maybe do an update. Other hot spots include the engine room, the wheelhouse, the propeller box. I think there's obvious reasons for that. And the isolation ward, where those who were sick or diagnosed with disease were kept away from other passengers. The isolation ward also served as a makeshift prison.
So years and years and years ago, talking about events and things that staying on there. My dad's business had an event there, and we got to stay, which was very cool. But strangely enough, at some point, I remember an alarm going off. Not for very long, but I do remember it. Now that you brought that up, I do remember that.
And was it just like a bunch of loud whistles and horns? Ship hornish?
Yes, but of course not ship hornish. However, I did manage to stay in my room.
Oh, you're no fun. There is a plaque on the Queen Mary that names all the passengers who died on board, and it's a really long list. I didn't see it close enough to be able to read anything, but it looks like a lot of names. I wonder if that's truly all of them, though. It doesn't sound like it.
I wonder if it was just military or if it was actually everyone. If it was a little boy that died and the two ladies that drowned in the pool.
I don't know, but that's a good question because it sounds to me like so many other businesses, some of this stuff wasn't documented because, it's bad for business.
Exactly.
But by far, the most haunted room on board is cabin number B340. The room is reported to have strange noises, moving objects, guests being touched by unseen hands, lights that turn on and off by themselves, the bed shaking for no reason, because the bed shaking for a good reason is not bad. And why is my brain going there today?
Today?
Shut up.
Act like this is news.
And the water is left running with absolutely nobody there. The room had so much paranormal activity that it actually was taken out of commission as a hotel room for over 30 years. They emptied everything out of it, and nobody outside of maintenance was allowed to enter. And if anyone did have to go in there, they never went in alone. Now, to me, that says a lot because hotel rooms are money. So there must be something to this.
I have mixed feelings about this. I wouldn't mind seeing things fly around the room. I think that would be kind of cool. But I'm not down with the whole touch me thing, especially when I'm asleep. No, thank you.
You're no fun. But like so many other businesses, the Queen Mary closed in 2020 due to the COVID pandemic. This time was used for a little refurbishing, and the ship is now open again as of spring 2023. And with all the paranormal interest, room B340 was reopened and can now be booked for about $500 per night. With all this strange and unexplained phenomena, who's brave enough to sink in? Wahahaha. Let's do it, Blondie.
Maybe. I'll actually give you maybe on that one.
Ooh, look at you.
Look, but I'm starting to think at $500 a night, if that's more than the average room. I mean, you are getting accommodations and a show.
And you might get touched. Usually that's extra. So worth it.
There she goes. Well, thank you very much for listening. Take care and remember to let your imaginations run wild.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
We just want to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send in your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at grimwitwithdimwits, Twitter at grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook, Grimwit with Dimwits. Join us every Monday for new episodes and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
We would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.